Hi viewers, welcome to my channel. In today's video lecture on the algal type study, let us look at an interesting organism from the red algae group, the organism being Porphyra. Now the red algae are named so because of their vivid red colored pigment, and this group is coming under the division Rhodophyta as per the Smith system of classification. Porphyra belongs to the class Rhodophyceae under this division. Order is Bangiales, family is Bangiaceae, and the genus is Porphyra. Some of the important species of Porphyra include Porphyra perforata, Porphyra umbilicus, Porphyra gardneri, Porphyra nereocystis, and so on. So, what I have listed out over here are some of the important species of this organism. Now, this organism is found in the marine water habitat, and in the marine water, or when we call it as a marine red alga, it is found mainly in the intertidal zones. Now in the intertidal zones, it is found attached to the rocky shorelines or the rocks that are found over there, hence it is called as a lithophyte. But there are a few species which can be found growing attached to other plants as well, and hence they are called as epiphytes. So this organism is restricted to the intertidal zone, though we have found few that are fully submerged as well, but most of them are found attached to the rocks in the intertidal zone throughout the world. So they are found in the tropics, you can find them even in the polar regions. They prefer the colder temperatures, that is the temperate regions, but they are found throughout the world. Some of these species are edible, and you might have seen the reddish black wrapping that is found in the sushi rolls. That is actually made up of the dried and toasted porphyra blades. So these species are having a prime importance in the food of the oriental regions, that is like Japan, Korea, China, and in fact in these regions this porphyra is the focus of $1 billion aquaculture industry. It is the prime focus. There are a lot of farmers who are going in for aquaculture where they are growing porphyra. So this organism has also been a focus of physiological research because it is able to tolerate the desiccation in the intertidal zones. So these are some significance of porphyra and the occurrence of porphyra. Now looking at the thallus of this organism is found to be having one of the most simplest type of thallus. The reason being, the porphyra thallus is a plate or a sheet like blade. So it is just having a thin plate like structure or a sheet like structure, and the margin of this plate or this sheet can be either smooth, wavy, or it can be greatly convoluted. But it is a thin plate like structure that is found. It is often unbranched, as you can see in the picture. It is not a branch structure or a branch thallus, and it is attached to the substratum, that is the plant or the rocks. It is attached to the substratum with the help of a small attachment disc or a hold fast. So it is a cushion like structure which is helping in attaching to the substratum. The blades contain layers of cells. So one or two coplanar layers of cells are present, and that is why it is having a 2 to 3 layer thick structure which we call as the massive parenchymatous sheath. So this is the thallus which is which the porphyra is made up of. The cells are more or less evenly distributed within the layer, and they are uninucleate. Some of the characteristic features of the cells are that the cells of porphyra are having, like all the other eukaryotic cells, these cells are also having all the organelles like nucleus, vacuoles, and mitochondria, ribosomes, endoplasmic reticulum, etc. But what is strikingly different here is their plastid. So being an algae, it has a plastid, but the plastid here is star shape in nature, or we can call that as a stellate plastid. The organisms, every cell of the organism will have one or two stellate plastid, as you can see over here, and this plastid is called as a rhodoplast because it belongs to the Rhodophyta group. It is called as a rhodoplast. So the rhodoplast is having a conspicuous pyrenoid in the center. As I have been telling in my previous classes, pyrenoid is the site where carbon dioxide fixation takes place. So in the exact center of the star-shaped plastid, there is one pyrenoid that is present. These plastids are rich in phycobilisomes, namely phycoerythrin and phycocyanin. And at the base of the cells, there is the rhizoid which are produced, which are helping the entire organism or the entire blade to attach to the substrate. The cells which are found in the margin of the thallus, they are the ones which produce the spores, which we will be talking about a little later. So this is the plant body or the structure of Porphyra. Porphyra is an organism which has been even found in the fossilized form. It has been discovered to have been present more than 1,000 million years ago. So this is the organism which shows a parenchymatous sheath structure. One of the stages during the reproduction of Porphyra is what has been shown over here. This is a structure that we call as the coccosporangial structure or the coccosporangium branches, which I'll be discussing about a little later. So when we talk about the thallus of the Porphyra, Porphyra is having a blade-like massive parenchymatous thallus. Now, when we look at the reproduction of the organism shows asexual reproduction by direct transformation of the vegetative cell into neutral spores. So the spores are formed directly by the transformation of vegetative cell. That's why they are called as the neutral spores. As you can see over here, there are several neutral spores that are being formed. And usually at the thallus apex, the spores are formed by the anticlinal division. Anticlinal is the division that is perpendicular to the surface. So all the spores tend to be in the same layer because of the anticlinal division. This is the mode of asexual reproduction in Porphyra. The organism also shows sexual reproduction, and the sexual reproduction is dioecious in nature. So the sexual reproduction is of oogamous type, where there are sharply differentiated sex organs that are seen, the male sex organ and the female sex organ. And these sex organs will produce gametes by the stimulation. Their main stimulations are the specific conditions of light, the quantity of light, the quality of intensity of light, the day length, temperature. All of these trigger the sex organs to produce the gametes. The male gametes are known as spermatia. They are produced in packets. As you can see here, they are produced in packets at the blade margins, and they are released by the dissolution of our blade margin. On the other hand, female gametes, which are called as carpogonia, are formed a little away from the margin. So on the margin, what is being formed are the male sex cells or the male gametes or the spermatia, and what is formed a little away from the margin are the female sex cells or the female gametes, which are known as the carpogonia. Now, in some cases, in some of the species, there will be a receptive surface which is called as the trichogyne, which protrudes from each carpogonium and to which the spermatia will attach. This is only found in a few species. This will help once both the gametes, the male and the female gametes attach, then that is what we call as the fertilization. So as you can see over here, this is the spermatangium, and the spermatangium is forming, or there are repeated division which are helping in the production of the spermatangia. There are 32 to 128 small spermatangia which are formed. These are colorless in nature. They are arranged in several superimposed tiers of 4 or 8 or 16, as you can see in this figure. And when the plants are flooded by the incoming tide, the walls of the spermatangia become gelatinized, and they liberate the spores. The liberated uninucleated protoplast of each spermatangium, what is now liberated, is called as a spermatangium. So each one of these is a spermatangia or spermatia, which is going to help in fertilizing the female gamete. When these spermatia are liberated, they are non-motile. You must remember that this belongs to a red algae group which have zero motility. They show no motility at all in any of their stages. So these spermatia, which are non-motile, are released and they are carried by the water currents. Passively they are carried in all the directions. Some of them may drift and reach a carpogonium where fertilization will take place. So this is the formation of the spermatia. Now, as you can see over here, this is the female gamete and the gametangia. This is carpogonium. So carpogonium is the structure that is, or it is formed by a slight modification of an ordinary vegetative cell in the female thallus. This cell will increase in size, and the swollen this increased size or the swollen size protoplast will directly function as the egg. So in some of the species, like I told you, the carpogonium has an extended surface at one end, which we call as the trichogyne, as you can see over here. In some other species, that trichogyne is not present. So if the trichogyne is present, that trichogyne is going to accept the incoming male gamete. But in species which lack this trichogyne, for example, in the Porphyra umbilicus, if the trichogyne is absent, then the spermatium itself will put forth a narrow process and it will enter into the cytoplasm. So the presence of trichogyne is not mandatory. It may or may not be present. Once the trichogyne accepts the male spore, if there is a trichogyne, it's the trichogyne that is accepting. Otherwise, the male spermatium will directly enter through a narrow channel or a narrow process into the carpogonium. So once these two fuse, once the two gametes fuse, what is formed immediately after fertilization, the zygote nucleus will undergo meiosis. There will be 4 haploid nuclei which are formed, which will further divide to form 8, 16 or 32 nuclei. So as you can see here, there are more number of cells that are being formed. Now the protoplast will divide to cover itself around each one of the nucleus. This leads to the formation of 8 to 32 uninucleate haploid spores, which we now call as the carpospores. So the number of spores that are being formed will differ from one species to another, but the spores are being formed after meiosis and immediate mitosis. Now these spores are present, they are also non-flagellated and they are released by the breakdown of the surrounding cell walls. So when the female thallus is submerged by the incoming tide and the surrounding cell wall breaks open, these are being released. These spores, carpospores, are being released. Now this carpospore will also have a stellate rhodoplast or a chromatophore, as we have seen earlier. In some cases, the carpospore will now, after the fertilization has occurred and after the carpospores have been formed, when it is about to germinate, the liberated carpospore will become amoeboid for 2 to 3 days. Then it comes to a rest, becomes spherical. So the liberated carpospore will become spherical and it will germinate either directly to form the thallus or it will form the conchocoelous stage. So this conchocoelous stage is also seen only in a few of the species, wherein the conchocoelous stage is branch structure that is being formed. So some of them form this branch filamentous structure, which we call as the conchocoelous stage. Others will directly give rise to the plate-like thallus of Porphyra. So this was about the occurrence, thallus structure, distribution and reproduction, which we have seen in Porphyra, which is an exemplar of the red algae. There are many more other red algae which are of importance. Hope to see you all in the next video lecture. Thank you.